Hello, welcome back to Luke's Economics. In today's video, I'm going to talk about my experience in my undergraduate degree. I just completed my Bachelor's of Economics recently, and I'll talk a bit about my experience, what I felt economics was like for me, and kind of how my university journey went. So I was a business student reject, and I ended up going into economics because my grades were not good enough to be accepted into the business faculty. So that will bring me to the very first question is, are all economics students business rejects? The short answer is probably not. A lot of international students take economics. I found a lot of Middle Eastern students actually study economics in high school, and so they'll take it in university because they already have a strong background in it. You'll also find that a lot of Asian students will also take economics because it's very math intensive, very numbers based, and when English is a bit of a difficulty, their math skills are far beyond what we learn over here in North America, and it makes it very easy for them to, or not very easy, but it makes it easier for them to do good in economics, purely because of the fact that they've already been exposed to more complicated math, allowing them to have all of the mathematical part of economics, which is economics is very math intensive, which is something that people probably don't think of when they think of economics. I would say if you are interested in economics, it's either because you want to become a professor, as in you're interested in academia, or you want to work a public job. To my knowledge, if you want to work and make lots of money in the private sector for a business, for a bank, financial corporation, you are better off with a finance degree than with an economics degree. As far as North America goes, I believe that that is true. That is my personal experience and understanding of the lack of jobs that an econ students get versus a finance student. The joke in my friend group is that we've all completed our first degree of unemployment when we get our degree of economics, as the labor market right now is very hard to get a job with an economics degree, much less a good paying job that you could actually live off and be able to afford a house and all these kind of luxuries. Basically impossible. But if you want to make a lot of money, you can go into finance, get a job for a bank, for Goldman Sachs, whatever, and make the big bucks. So a bit more about my actual experience in economics. I took economics because it was required for business, and when I didn't have a good enough GPA grades for business, I ended up going into economics instead. And I also wanted to do it to challenge myself because I'm not good at math, and that was the part that I struggled the most in business. And economics was more math intensive, so I figured, you know what, if I can do better at economics than at business, I can prove myself that I can do what was more difficult for me, which was math. Now, the first few years of economics at my school were actually quite theory-based, so you learn a lot of theoretical understandings of the economy of the world, where you'll see a lot of ceteris paribus, which is like, it means if these conditions hold, this will happen, which often does not actually reflect the real world, but it will be the base level that you will need when doing the more complex math later. So an economics degree is very interesting. It's essentially a poor man's math degree, a poor man's programming degree, and you learn some theory in there. It's a lot more coding based than you would expect, being able to use coding programs like R and Stata. If those means nothing to you, don't worry, it's fine. It's essentially, you'll have coding programs that will just run the numbers because the math will get very hard, the numbers will get complex, so you'll have these computers, which are better at math than humans, to essentially do all the operations. You just put in a number and you get the output. And that's, in my experience, a lot of what the coding was used for. I don't ever do coding from scratch, hence a poor man's programming degree. It's also very math intensive. Now, I've been told by my professor, econ doesn't do math, we do very hard algebra. Or sorry, econ doesn't do calculus, it does very hard algebra. It's basically all math. In the later years of your economics degree, essentially what you're going to be doing is very complicated math, very complicated algebra, very complicated partial derivatives with lots of variables. And a lot of students who are good at math will struggle because there is meant to be some theory behind how you set up equations to try and solve them. but a lot of the times the theory is based on the theory you learn in your first few years, which is not actually representative of the real economy. It's only representative of the real economy if all of these credentials hold, which is likely not to be the case. Now, that being said, those are like the core classes, very math-based, very coding-based, etc. The other classes that you'll take in economics are very theory-based. But what's interesting is in my entire economics degree, I only ever took 2 classes in economics, and my course load was like 80% plus economics classes. I only took 2 classes that actually applied economics to the real world. I took an energy economics class over COVID, and we talked a lot about OPEC, how energy was sort of impacting COVID, how the prices of oil was being affected, how the demand for energy was being affected, because essentially when the economy closed down for 2 weeks, there was no energy being used, so you would see this prices drop, and my professor was saying, this would be the perfect time to buy oil. The prices drop substantially, but when everything opens up, we're going to need oil again. It's just because they don't have enough inventory for all of the production that they're continuing to make, blah, 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 blah. I found that very, very, very interesting, actually talking about the real economy, because what was happening during COVID was history, which is what economics likes to focus on, is what happened and analyze it and blah, 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 blah. But we were living in history and analyzing it. Super interesting. The other class that I talked about the real economy was I did a class which was based around a challenge where you presented an interest rate recommendation to the federal bank. So in Canada, that was the Bank of Canada. And this one was very based on the real economy. We were essentially told, good luck. And that was it. So we had to find data on the Canadian economy, the current state of the Canadian economy, its past trajectory, and what we expect its future trajectory to be, and therefore recommended interest rate. These 2 classes were the only 2 classes in my degree where we ever talked anything about the real economy or tried to apply things to the real economy. So a lot of the times, people think economics is studying the economy, knowing the economy. I literally know nothing about the Canadian economy right now. Nothing. Can I do complex algebra? Sure, kind of well. I pass my classes, but I don't really understand what's going on. I'm not that great at math. I just have smart friends who help me. So I think that the understanding of what a student has when they graduate with an economics degree versus what people think they have is very different. Now, if you're in the academia world, I think you're very well aware of what a student with the economics degree has, and it's basically a poor man's math degree with some theory mixed in there, and super, super, super basic coding levels. Now, in terms of my undergraduate degree difficulty, a common joke with my friends is that it's harder than a business degree. I never got a business degree, I don't know for sure, but I will say it's a lot more math intensive. It's very math intensive. You'll have a lot of math-based classes where you'll be doing a lot of partial derivatives, a lot of ugly mathematical formulas that don't really, like, what the world are you doing? Who knows? You're creating the actions, interactions of this economy. If you could control everything, great. Nice. It's essentially to show that you can do it. It's very impressive how the professors can do it, how they know all this stuff, how you can, try and solve it. But in terms of actual applicability to the real economy, there's very little. And this is something that I think is a loss from the undergraduate degree in economics, is that I would have loved to have more classes that were actually based on the real economy and understanding the real economy, predicting things in the real economy. Here's the housing market. An economics class in the housing market would be absolutely unbelievable, so useful. You could make a global section and a domestic section and just talk about, here's the current state of the housing market, here's what I would expect to happen, this is the reason why, go through all of this, reasons, real world reasons, but instead you'll see a lot of these theories that are being applied to stuff which only work if all these constraints are followed. So it's very dissatisfactory in that sense. In my master's degree, which I'm applying for, we'll see if I get in, we'll see if I get accepted, and we'll see if it's any different. I don't expect so. One of my friends is doing his master's right now, and he said it's the exact same as the final year of your undergrad, just more math intensive and more work to do. So I'm not super optimistic. So that's a bit about my experience as my undergraduate degree in economics. I believe the next 2 videos I make will be about the misconceptions of people's understanding of economics degree versus what it actually entails, which I did talk a bit about in this video, and I will probably make another video on how to know if economics is for you based on what you want to study, what you're interested in, and what you want your job to be like after you get your undergraduate degree completed. So I believe those will be the next 2 videos on this channel, and then afterwards I will be making videos either going over Gary's economics videos or doing research on the Canadian economy and trying to find out what I think is important to do predictions for the future state of the Canadian economy. Thank you for watching. Good luck.